Perfect.
Awesome. So I'm going to, just a mini band. If you have that already, then that's great. I'm going to jump in. We have our warm up, which is the same as usual, and then we have our strength circuit, which is the same as usual. So warm up, we have 5 exercises. We'll repeat them twice, and then our workout, we have 3 exercises. We'll repeat those 3 times. So we're going to start one knee on the ground this time and 1 foot up on the ground. So instead of starting off with an inchworm to get the hamstrings, we're going to do a hip flexor to hamstring stretch, where we're going to reach up to the sky. We're going to press the hip forward, tucking the tailbone underneath when we're going forward. And then when we're going to come down, we're going to send the pelvis back behind. You don't have to extend your leg all the way. You can, if you want to, bring the hands to the ground. So we're going to go back and forth between our hip flexor stretch and then our hamstring stretch. And when we're doing this, I want you to pay really close attention to how you're moving your pelvis. So when you come into this hip flexor stretch, you should feel like your pelvis tucks under to really press that hip flexor forward. When you go back, you want to really feel like your tailbone is shining behind you, your whole hip, pelvis, and hip and pelvis go back. So we're going from hip flexor to hamstring. We're not just rounding our back and then kind of like arching our back. We're really trying for this motion to come from the pelvis and a little bit of pelvis rotation. So it's tucking under and then going back. Maybe a little bit hard to see over the camera, a little bit more of like a minute movement, but it's quite a big difference when you do this with your pelvis, leading the movement instead of like your back rounding the movement. Let's switch to the other side. We're going, again, hip flexor to hamstring. We're leading with the hips through this movement instead of just arching and rounding the back. We're trying to keep the back as like flat and neutral as possible and really moving the hips through this movement. Like my hamstrings are pretty tight, so I find that when I go to my hamstring stretch, my leg gets a nice stretch before I fully extend it. So you don't really have to push yourself to get full extension. Just go to the point where you feel like a nice hamstring stretch. Let's do one more here. And then we're going to go ahead and grab that mini band. So we're going to go back to those clamshells today. We're going to do the same kind of clamshell followed by glute bridge complex here. Really good to focus on developing the glutes. That was one of the key focuses that we identified as wanting to continue to work on. So we're coming down onto our side, shoulders, hips, feet are all in a line, knees are a little bit in front. I've got my band on, but you can do this without a band. We're keeping the hips stacked, really focusing on engaging the gluteus medius as we lift our knee, keeping our heels together, and then drop the knee back down. Were you guys finding that your glutes were pretty sore again after last session, or not quite as traumatized as the first one?
Not as bad, not as bad.
Good, they're already getting used to it. The training stimulus is already there. Awesome. We'll aim for 8 to 10 on each side. So once you hit that 10 mark, I've got one more on my count here. We'll switch over to the other side. Is this starting to feel any easier for you guys to like lift the band or to feel that muscle activate, or does it feel about the same?
Easier.
Does feel easier? Often when you like get better at this, you can maybe you can lift a little bit higher, but it's less so the actual height that you lift your knee and more so just the ease at which you can do it. So like if you're actually developing better neuromuscular connection to your glutes, you'll just find that it's easier to lift your knee up when you do this movement. Once you've done 10 of those, we're going to switch onto our back. So if you can do a single leg glute bridge. Hopefully you can give yourself a challenge this time. And if you still find that that's too challenging, you can keep your feet on the ground and do the double leg glute bridge. So it's 5 on each side. We're going singles or 10 total if you're going the double leg glute bridge. Still focusing on really using the glutes to do this lifting movement. And I have my gluteus medius activated a little bit more because I've got that band on. And I have to keep a little bit of tension pushing into the band. Awesome, so 5 on each side or a total of 10 if you're going the 2 legs together. And for this next exercise, you'll probably want to take the band off. It makes it quite a bit more challenging to keep the band on, but you can challenge yourself on the next round if you want to keep your band on for the next one. So the next exercise, once you're done your glute bridges, we'll roll over onto the side. So we're on our sides. We're gonna come into a, actually no, I'm skipping ahead of myself. We're gonna do a bird dog as the next one. So on your hands and knees, and I'm gonna challenge you guys this time if you wanna lift your knees up off the ground. I know it's a little hard to see that there's a gap between the black floor and my black tights, but I'm gonna challenge you guys to try and do bird dog with your knees hovering 1 to 2 inches off the ground. If that's too challenging, drop those knees down to the ground and just go for your regular bird dog. We're trying to keep the core strong and engaged as if we're pulling the hands into our knees and really thinking about reaching out in the direction of the wall in front and behind me and not necessarily lifting up. So we're not trying to arch our back here. We're trying to reach out in front, and if you can challenge yourself by doing this one with your knees 1 to 2 inches off the ground, that's a great extra challenge. Nice. I want everyone to really give a little bit of focus into tucking your ribs into your pelvis. You can look into the screen and see if there's a little bit of a dip in your back. So Vicky, even if you look into your screen there, you can see there's an arch in your low back. So you want to try and lift your belly button. Imagine tucking the ribs into the pelvis. And that's the right idea. You want to try and think about keeping that neutral spine throughout the whole movement. So even as I extend my leg and I extend my arm, I'm not arching my back as I'm extending. So I want to keep that connection as much as possible by engaging the core. It's not the easiest thing to just fix in one day, but it's good to just bring intention to that and try and make sure that you're getting that. Awesome. Once you're done, about 8 to 10 of those, we're going to come to standing. And then we'll have our last warm-up exercise for the circuit. Nicely done, ladies. So once you're done your bird dogs, we're going to come standing. We're going to come down into this hinge position where I'm going to have my back flat and my hips are kind of back a little bit in the hinge. And this is kind of like the WYTs, except for we're just going to target the hardest part the entire time, no band. We're just going to do 10 straight T's, holding up for a couple of seconds here, so 2-3 seconds, holding in that upright position. So I'm really thinking about not hunching my shoulders forward. I'm thinking about keeping my shoulder blades back, and then I'm dropping my hands down and then lifting them up into that Y shape. Nicely done. Good. And again, we're going for approximately 8 to 10 of each of these warm-up exercises. And then once we're done our Ys, we're going to drop back down into the top of that circuit and repeat. Nicely done. Great, so once you're done, you can go right back into that start of the circuit, which was that hip flexor to hamstring stretch. Maybe hips are feeling a little bit more warmed up at this point. You can feel like you can get a little bit further, either forward or backwards, but still focusing on like shifting your weight and moving through your hips and pelvis, and trying to keep your back in a relatively neutral position the entire time. Nicely done. That's it. It hopefully feels a little bit more warmed up, a little bit less stiff. Once you get 8 to 10 on one side, you can switch over to the other side for 8 to 10 on the other side. Good work. It's always funny doing these virtual sessions when I see just a sliver of people's bodies. I can never see like the whole movement. I'm like, it looks like you guys are doing great. I see your kneecap. Good. Once you've got 8 to 10 of those, we're going to transition down to the floor, grabbing our mini band for those clamshells again. And a little progression, if you feel like the clamshells are getting easier, which you guys were mentioning, if you feel like the clamshells in they're just like lying down, sideline clamshells getting a little bit easy, you can try a sideline clamshell, which you're in a bit of a side plank. So my elbow is down on the ground and my knees are down on the ground, and those two are in line. My feet are now behind, and then from that side plank position, I can add on to do a side plank clamshell. So if you wanted to increase the level of difficulty, you can give that side plank clamshell a try, or you can keep it down on the ground. It does increase the level of difficulty pretty significantly, so you can choose your own adventure at this point. Nice. That was a no-go, Emily.
I'm gonna stick with these ones for a bit.
Yeah. Good work.
It's supposed to be up off the ground.
Yeah, so if you do just like the regular side lying, then you have everything in contact with the ground. If you do them in the side plank, then you have your hips up off of the ground.
Okay. I'll work on that one for next week.
Okay, sounds good. Once you've done 8 to 10, you can switch over to the other side. Nicely done, everybody. Awesome work. Once you've done those 8 to 10 on each side, you can head out straight into those glute bridges. So you can do either 10 regular glute bridges or 5 single leg glute bridges on each side. Nicely done, ladies. And one good cue to think about when I'm doing this is I want to think about having my heel being the main contact in my foot. So I want to think less about pushing with my toe. If my heels come off the ground, then I'm probably using more my quads, maybe my calves to lift here. I want to think about driving my heel into the ground. And by driving your heel, you're making sure that you're engaging your hamstrings, your glutes, your back, your whole posterior chain. So you can think as that is a good cue to help you engage all of the right muscles in this glute bridge. Once you're done those glute bridges, we're going to come back to that bird dog. Did anyone give it a try with the knees off the ground? You guys sticking with knees on the ground today?
I think I'm gonna stick with knees on the ground. I tried it off, but I kept falling, and then I realized I was doing same arm, same leg, which was not working.
Yeah, opposite arm is a lot easier than doing same arm, same leg. Same arm, same leg is very impossible with knees off the ground. So choose your level of difficulty. We're going opposite arm, opposite leg, bird dog here. And even if you have your legs or your knees on the ground, the main focus for this one is just creating tension. So often when we do core, let's say we do crunches, the tension is automatically created because we have to lift some part of our body. And in this exercise, the automatic tension is created in our back or shoulders or glutes when we have to lift our arm and our leg. But the intentional tension is what we're trying to create by imagining that we're pulling our hands into our knees and we're intentionally trying to create tension in the anterior part of our body, not just the posterior part of our body. And it's that tension that we create in the front as well as in the back. The combination of that will help create a neutral spine. If you only use one side of your body, like let's say you just think about engaging your back, you'll end up with that arch in your back and not creating a neutral spine. So you have to think about creating the tension through your abs and the front part of your core as well. We have one last warm-up exercise. So once you guys are done the bird dog, we're going to come back to a standing position. And we're going to drop into that hinge. And we're going for the Y's. And I want you to think about your thumbs pointing up to the sky. So it'll change very much which muscles you're activating if you went like pinky to sky versus thumbs to sky. So I want you to think about lifting your thumbs up to the sky when you're doing this exercise here. We're really pulling the shoulder blades back and down away from our ears as we're doing a Y shape with our lift here. Nicely done, ladies. Almost done the warm-up. Finish off those last couple of reps. Sometimes the warm-up is just as hard as the actual strength training exercises, so good job. Take a little water break if you need to grab a quick sip here, and we're going to transition to the strength circuit. And for the strength circuit, we just need the mini band, and everything else is without the band today. How you guys doing?
Good.
Good, awesome. So I have a pretty challenging starting exercise for you guys. So I don't need any equipment for my first exercise. I'll do a quick run through of the 3 exercises that we're going to do today, talk about some cues, and then we're going to jump into them. So the first exercise that we have is a side plank with a leg raise. So the side plank you can do either from the bottom knee and the bottom elbow with leg lifts on your top leg. So you can kind of see how I have my hips off the ground, but my knee and my elbow are in contact with the ground. That's level 1. Level 2 would be going from like your feet are on the ground, there's no knee on the ground and an elbow. You can do your leg lifts from here. And if you wanted to add a little bit more difficulty to your shoulder, you can do it from your hand as well. So those are the options for your side plank with leg lifts. We're going to do 8 to 10 on each side. The second exercise is a banded squat, where we'll grab our mini band and we're going to think about dropping into as deep of a squat as possible, keeping our shoulders back so not rounding. And you want to really think about keeping the knees in line with the feet, so we're going to have to really push into the band to get that movement. Our last exercise is a variation on the single leg deadlift, which we've done. So instead of just repeating 10 single leg deadlifts on each side, if you wanted to have a weight or a resistance, you can grab a weight or resistance. If you want to just focus on balance, that's also good. We're going to go right, and then immediately switch left, and then immediately switch both. And we're going to go 8 to 10 times in that matrix, right, left, both. Okay? Ready to give that a go? So we're going to drop into the side plank first. We're going to go 8 to 10 leg lifts on each side. Choose your level of difficulty. If you want to go knees and elbow, that's totally fine. If you want to challenge yourself by going foot and elbow, that's great. You can jump right into it. 8 to 10 leg lifts. And see how high you can get that leg. If you find that your leg is not getting up super high, that's totally fine. One thing I want you to keep in mind is that you want your leg to run straight up and down, and you don't want your leg to come forward. So I'd rather you have a decreased range of motion if it's going straight up, rather than like trying to get it higher and like bending it and bringing it forward. So you guys look like you're doing a great job there. Nicely done. Good work. Once you hit 8 to 10, switch over to the other side. So I'm picking to go on my knee for the first couple here, and I can see how my body reacts to that, how hard I find it to do 8 to 10 with my knee down. On the next round, I might try to go for my foot, and on the last round, if I'm feeling good, I might go for my hand, or I might come back to my knee if I'm feeling tired. You can just gauge it, but challenge yourself depending on how you feel. Nicely done. Good job. Once you've done 8 to 10 of those on each side, you can go ahead and grab your band and put your band on around your knees. So for this one, you want the band just a little bit above your knees, so that you can really use your knees to press into the band. And when you're getting set up, place your feet slightly wider than hip width apart. Feel the glutes work to put a little bit of tension. It's kind of like that clamshell style movement where we're putting tension into the band. And then only go as far as you can, keeping your back neutral. So if that's only to a 90-degree squat, that's great. If that's only to a half squat, that's also fine. Or if you can get all the way down, that's extra awesome. But just find the level of difficulty that works for you so that you can keep your knees in control and your core posture looking nice and good there, nice and solid. And even an extra level of difficulty would be to try and look up as much as you can. So instead of bending down with your chest coming to your knees, trying to keep your chest in an upright or more upright position. And sometimes it's even easier to use your hands out in front of you to counterbalance your chest if that helps for you. We're just going for 8 to 10 here. And then once you're done 8 to 10, we're gonna drop that band. I'm gonna go right into the deadlift, the single leg deadlift. Right, left, both complex. Lots of glutes today, lots of legs, not as much arms today. We're really hitting the glutes hard. So we're 8 to 10 times that whole matrix of right, left, and both. And you might find that you have to challenge yourself to move a little bit quicker to actually get the reps in here. As much as possible, still try and keep the balance as the key focus. So if you have to slow it down and really reduce the number of reps, if you only get 3 rounds through the complex, That's totally fine if you need to slow it down just to focus on balance. But if you feel like the balance is coming with you, you can try and move a little bit more continuously through this for a really good hamstring and glute workout. Nicely done. Good job, ladies. Keep working through that. We're gonna go for 2 more at my pace so you can see where that gets you. It's okay if you don't get the full reps. No worries there. Awesome job. All right, we're gonna jump back to the top of that circuit. So you can finish off whatever round you were doing and then find your spot on the ground. We're going for those side plank leg lifts again. This is like an extra glute day. Yeah. So hopefully you're feeling your glutes. So I challenged myself to go with my feet and my elbows this time to see if I can get my 8 to 12 leg lifts from my feet and my elbows. This is my little challenge. You can try and challenge yourself, or you can stick to where you were at your previous level of difficulty. Challenge yourself as much as you feel like you're ready for today. Awesome job, ladies. And once you're done 8 to 10, you can roll over onto the other side and do 8 to 10 on the other side. So you can always kind of check in with yourself, see if you're rounding forward or falling backwards. Same thing with your hips. You want your shoulders to be stacked and you want your hips to be stacked so that your leg goes straight up into the sky. Nicely done, everybody. Awesome work. Once you're done those leg lifts, you can find that mini band. We're going to go mini band on into our banded squats.
My mini band broke.
That's okay. You can go regular squats if you don't have a mini band.
Quick.
You can have the same focuses, which is keeping the middle of the knees lined up over the middle of the toes, keeping the chest up and dropping down only as far as you can while keeping your back nice and flat. So you can maybe, without the mini band, you might find it more challenging to keep your knees lined up over your toes because there's no external feedback. You can still try and have that same focus.
Okay.
Nicely done, everyone. We're going for 8 to 10 here. You can test your range of motion, see if you can go all the way down. Maybe it's too challenging on the legs. Maybe you just try it once and say, oh, that was too far. You can always test your limits here. Very safe exercise to test your limits in. Body weight exercises mean less risk of injury here. It's not like we're loading it and testing ourselves. All right, third exercise is that single leg deadlift, right, left, both matrix. So again, go at whatever pace is good for you. So if you have to slow the pace down to keep the balance, then that's totally fine. If you're able to speed the pace up, then that's awesome. Just find what works for you. I'm going for 8 to 10. Just see where you guys get at with your timing. Good, and even if you're going a little bit faster than you would normally, you still want to challenge yourself to keep your back nice and flat and to keep your glutes and your hamstrings as the primary movers in this exercise. So if you find that your back is really starting to hurt or that you're rounding your back, slow it down even more. Check in with yourself to make sure that you're really keeping that hip hinge as a primary movement and you're avoiding rounding with your back. Nicely done. Good work. Woo. That's it. I'm gonna do 2 more on my pace here. Woo. I'm losing my balance looking back and forth at the screen. Good. Last little bit here. You can finish up whatever circuit you're on. And then we're gonna go one more time through that whole circuit. Good job, ladies. Is anyone feeling the glutes burn already?
Yeah.
Great. All right, let's see if you can challenge yourself an extra little bit for these side plank leg lifts. If you can challenge yourself to go to the next level, that's awesome. If you find that you're getting a little bit tired and you want to stay down at that first level, that's also fine. Choose your level of difficulty. We're going 8 to 10 leg lifts. Good job. Awesome. Once you got 8 to 10, you can flip over onto the other side. 8 to 10 on the other side. And again, you can check in, make sure that you're using your core to lift your hips up nice and high. You want to avoid sinking through the hips. So if you're finding that your hips are really sinking down or it's too much for your core, you can always drop down to that previous level of difficulty, whether it's from the elbow or from the knee. Awesome job, ladies. And once you've hit 10, you can go ahead and grab that mini band. Or no mini band if you don't have one, that's okay. Good job, gang. We're almost there. We're moving really well through this circuit, really targeting some strong improvements with the legs. Going hard on the legs today. That's looking good. You guys are keeping your form together really nicely. Awesome job. Again, we're going for 8 to 10 of these. And even if you want just one, challenge yourself to see if you can go a little bit further. The beauty of having the screen and the camera is maybe you can see yourself. If you have a mirror, you can double check your form in the mirror. See how you're doing. Awesome work. All right, once you're done 8 to 10 of those, very last exercise for today is our single leg deadlift. Right, left, both complex. And again, move at the pace that you can to get that balance working for you. So if you have to slow it down, that's totally fine. Good work. Again, we're going for 8 to 10 approximately, but if you're slowing it down, might mean that you get fewer. You just go on the time that it takes me to do 8 to 10, that's totally fine. Good job. As you get tired, as your glutes start to feel like they're burning, you might have a tendency to lose the knee stability. So if you're really finding that you're losing it, really slow down or even pause for a moment to regain that focus to keep the knee strong and stable. Nice and on. I've got 2 more that I'm going to do here on my pace. And that's a wrap.
Thanks, Annika.
Good job, gang.